Well, it's come around faster than a crank arm doing a pedal revolution. It's Ask GC Anything. And this week, I've got Lucy Martin with me, former professional with Garmin Cervelo, Bowls Dolmans, and also represented Great Britain at the 2012 Olympic Games road race. Shall we get cracking?
Yep.
Well, first up, we've got this, haven't we, from Aid Scott on Twitter.
Yeah, we've got a question from him. He says, I've heard a lot about power meters and watts. I don't really understand it and how you can measure it. Can you please explain this?
Okay, well, Aid, we'll do the best we can. Now, a power meter is a device that fits to your bike via the rear hub, via the cranks, either left or right, or one or the other. And there's even power meters built into pedals as well. And they basically measure how much force, how much power you're putting through the bike. And you can use it to help assist with training and how you're developing. And pretty much every single professional has them on their bike these days, and amateurs as well. I didn't ever train to power. I do now a little bit, but I understand you did as a pro.
Yeah, I often had most of my training schedules set from power zones. You can do many different tests to work out which zone you should be training in. Like, for example, threshold will be a certain power, or zone 4 as it's also known as. And almost every time I went on my bike, I had a power meter, I had to look at it. It's not always a good thing to always be focused on your wattage and your power, but it's definitely a really good training tool nowadays.
I think it's one of the most important measurements in training these days, isn't it? Well, that's what it's considered. Now, to kind of have an insight into how power meters exactly work, you want to click on this video here where Simon explains, and he's forgotten his science glasses as well.
So, for example, if you're riding up a hill at a set speed, pedalling at 100 RPM will require just half the force of pedalling at 50 RPM. But because you exert that force twice as frequently, the power stays the same. See?
Well, next up, we have this question from Gregor's Chichos. Big apology for probably most likely getting that name wrong. But Gregor has asked, after riding for about half an hour seated, I sometimes feel annoying back pain when I ride out of the saddle. So I have to stand up for a while and make some stretches. Is this normal, or is my bike too big or badly fitted? Now, this is a really, really common problem that I think we've all suffered from time to time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge problem for many cyclists, all different abilities. And the problem is it can be caused by many different things. Quite often your bike position or your pedal setup, your cleats really cause back pain, but you can also be too tight, you may need to stretch more. The list just goes on. It's really a common problem, but it can easily be solved as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it could be a good idea if you've got if you've set your bike up yourself, which is quite often the case. It might be a good idea to go out for a ride with somebody a little bit more experienced so you can have a look at you. And sometimes straight away you can see that somebody's either too stretched out, the seat's too low, seat's too high. If you haven't got that luxury, it's probably a pretty good idea to go to a bike shop to get a bit of a bike fit in the absence of anything else. But also a good thing to do potentially, which I did, I used to suffer from quite a lot of back pain, especially in longer races over sort of 4 or 5 hours. Since I was about 38, 39, I did a load of core exercises and also a lot of stretching. And since then, I've never suffered any back pains. That might be something to look at as well. But for how to prevent back pain in the very first place, you can watch this video where Dan and Simon explain.
Check that your saddle is almost horizontal. Secondly, start riding and have a look at the angle of your knee when you're pedaling. When the crank is at the bottom of the stroke, there should still be a slight bend in your knee here. If there's not and your leg's fully extended, it probably means your saddle's too high. In that situation, it means that you're having to rotate your pelvis over the saddle in order to pedal, and that's not any good for your lower back.
Time now for the rapid fire round. You ready? You warmed up?
Yep.
Let's do this. We've got this on Twitter from Matt Williams talking about e-doping. Would taking a KOM on a tandem be cheating? I've done it before, but I flagged it myself on Strava as I felt bad.
It's quite a funny question. Maybe there needs to be another tandem race.
Do you mean a separate sort of segment on Strava? Event. Strava, if you're listening, get tandems on there, but otherwise, it's a bit naughty, isn't it, I reckon?
Yeah, it is. 2 people.
Well, what have we got next?
If someone came up with a transformable bar which let you adjust your position from aero to upright as you ride, would mechanical group sets be out of the question due to a cable flex accidentally changing gears?
That's one of the best questions we've ever had on the rapid fire round, because we could talk about that for a long time. But I think what Gelbrecht is trying to say is that if somebody had like some weird brainwave to sort of adjust positions as you move, which is pretty strange, you kind of would actually need to not have mechanical gears, because if you moved your stem up, it would stretch the cables. So you could do with almost like an ETAP type system where you've got like Wi-Fi kind of gears really. So the answer to that question, yeah, mechanical gears probably wouldn't work as you'd pull the calipers across. But a very strange question, but an interesting one nonetheless. Now next up we got this from Jamal Richardson, who's asked, good question this, can hard work outshine the so-called gifted cyclists? What do you reckon?
Definitely, I think so.
I'm in agreement.
It's all about hard work.
It is about application and hard work and self-belief, isn't it?
Exactly.
Definitely. There we go, another one here.
Now this is from Ruben Davey. Hi guys, I'm a 15-year-old and I cycle regularly. I have a one entry-level road bike, 9-speed aluminium Shimano, which I've saved up for. My question is, how do you do well in youth races with no financial support or cycling interest from parents?
Well, thanks very much, Ruben. That's a good question, and I think there are a lot of kids in a similar position. I don't know whereabouts in the world you're from, but probably the best thing to do in that situation is, what do you reckon, join a club or a local team to be with some like-minded kids and go online and maybe look for a club, something like that?
I think, to get support in any way, like you said, cycling club is probably the best option in this case.
I think there are a lot of teams that really do have pretty strong youth sections, I mean, all over the world. So get in touch. Or if you're in doubt and if you're clearly racing, go to race and have a speak or have a word, with the race organiser, and they'll quite often be able to put you in touch. And also, keep fighting as well, because I'm sure one day, in the not too distant future, your parents will make a bit of a U-turn. Right, slowing things down a little, we have this from Luca Stone in the comment section, who asks, hi GCN, when climbing up a long steady climb like Box Hill, should I stay upright or should I go into an aero position for a marginal gain? Now, thanks very much for getting in touch, Luca. Now first up, for those of you who've never heard of Box Hill is a long climb in the UK, not too steep, 5% gradient, and is 2.5 kilometres in length, and loads of people ride it. But interestingly, or more than interestingly, yourself, Lucy, you rode that hill in the Olympic Games road race, so you know this hill probably more than anybody. So what do you reckon to that question? Then we'll maybe talk a little bit about the Olympic Games as well.
Well, it's 2.5 kilometres, so it's quite long. It's not that steep, so you can kind of split it into sections, and I think you can definitely get aero and make a bit of time on the flatter, more straight sections, but I do remember getting out the saddle quite a lot because there's still a few little tiny kick-ups and you need to accelerate, keep the speed. So a bit of both really.
Can you remember the kind of speeds that you were going up there, or were you just on the rivet? Can you give us any data?
Oh no, just very, very fast.
Just very, very
I don't even remember looking down and seeing how fast it was. It was just very hard.
It is an interesting question actually, and I actually went over to France to kind of find out the answer. Now the question was, can you, or are there benefits of getting into an aerodynamic position on a climb? We know there are definite benefits on the flat, but just check out this video. Hopefully, you'll find it very interesting. First, I'm going to ride it on an all standard road setup, basically riding at 300 watts as measured by my Power to Max power meter. Then I'm going to ride it again at the same power, but this time I'm going to aero up, as it were. So I'm going to wear a Cask Bambino aero helmet and some tri-bars, just to see if there are any advantages.
Finally, we have this one from Edge Guts. As I train to improve my skills, I don't know which gear to use to effectively use my energy while developing strength.
Hashtag talkback. Well, Edge, that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, really good question.
I mean, we've been riding a while, and it's something that becomes innate in terms of changing gear. You automatically know when, but it is actually, when you think about it, it's just another skill, isn't it? And it does take a while to acquire, good skills in terms of knowing where and when to select your gear. Now, a guide in terms of pedal revolutions per minute, so RPM, riding on the flat for a beginner really is about 90 RPM, isn't it? But I think what you want to look at on the climbs is making, and on the flat, is to make sure you're not spinning too high a gear so you don't feel like you've got any forward motion or you're wobbling around on the bike. But conversely,
you don't want to be in a big gear, do you? And damaging your knees, really pushing a gear, that can make you very tired, and it's definitely not the most effective technique.
It's kind of practice makes perfect, isn't it? The more you ride the bike, the more you'll find what's optimal for you. And a really good thing, actually, we've not mentioned, is if you can get out on your bike with other people, ask other people, watch what other people are doing. That's a really good piece of advice as well. Or you could watch this video. How to change gear like a pro.
Now, one of the things you shouldn't do is change gear under load. It creates a lot of hassle. The ideal thing to do is select the gear nice and early, especially on a steep climb, as we are now. Now, Tom's going to get the gear wrong, and I'm going to get the gear right by selecting it early. Here's how to do it. I'm in the gear now, spinning quite nicely. There's quite a steep hairpin here. Now, I'm not going to change gear under load. I've selected the gear already. I can just cruise around this corner nice and easy. And Tom changes gear. Already got a bit of a gear crunch, and I've left him behind. Again, it's all about selecting the gear nice and early and thinking ahead.
Well, thanks again for all your questions. Please do keep them coming using the hashtag talkback in the comment section or over on social media as well. And thanks very much to you, Liz, for coming along as well.
Thanks for having me. And remember, you can subscribe to GCN by clicking on the globe.
And you've already done that, haven't you, I believe?
Yep.
So you told me earlier on. Now, for a tour of the Zip factory, someone all the way across to the US of A to do that. It's fascinating. Click just up here. And for how to recover faster from training, which I need, click just down here.